Hello, everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. The title was The Gathering of Eyes, but I felt like adding the word cosmic there, a cosmic gathering of eyes. And I thought this is one of the most interesting things a human being can talk about because it includes everything that relates to sight and how we are a genetical story. And of course, there's more. What we find in this place that we call the cosmos is a massive occurrence, a grand happening, an activity. We are a part of this activity. And the way that we are is that there has been an objective evolution, and first, from an unconscious world, there emerged an unconscious self. Then, that unconscious self emerged as a conscious self. And now it is becoming conscious of the world through the framework of the I thought, the identity, the ego. What we have is 8 billion unknown characters inside a known genetical story. The genetics is like the imagery for the story. We are literally an object being a subject to itself. So literally the genetics is being run by a story, and hence we have the story of our lives. You know how life, is it just a story, or is there more to the eyes that see? Some people meditate on what's in their senses, some people meditate on their senses. And I feel to meditate on your senses is to notice how genetics and its activity is simultaneously being the character in the story, which is the storyteller to its own movement, which is the storyteller of its own movement. What that means is every person, like a candle, is getting a certain range of signal. You know, okay, let me say like what it means is that the candle lights a certain part of the room. It receives your consciousness is lighting up a certain range of reality and calling that firmly establishing that in regards to your ideology or systems of belief or disbelief. What the unique thing is that we have come to be individualized sight. So when I say a gathering of eyes, I mean, just think about it. We're just 8 billion creatures, members of the same species, looking at a cosmic activity while it's happening the same time as we are. It could be even said we are a known genetical character in an unknown story. This is why I'm saying more than a genetical story. Uh, the character is known. Right now, who's speaking to you is a complex collection of cells, you know? But these cells have named themselves, technically, through an individual position. Like even though the person is a complex biological phenomena, but it's as if all this phenomenology is kept and contained by how we see ourselves as an individual. So I feel rather than us, which has been the traditional way where we've opened our eyes, we've seen a lot of things, and we've made a conclusion, it's kind of wondering about the next phase of how do we see the unseen? How do you know something that is unknown? Or as Carl Jung would say, or from Carl Jung's view, it would be how do we make the unconscious conscious? So we are like 8 billion conscious eyes in an unconscious system. It's fascinating that we are finding ourselves as a subject in an objective landscape. In an object based world, there's free will. I don't know this picture I chose, I think it's from an anime or something. But there was something about it that I kind of felt the modern human being is modern compared to the past. It's not compared to the present. You know, when you compare yourself in the present, there's always things you can update. When you can, victory is just the illusion of valuing yourself from the past, like it's a reference to the past. When it comes to the future, we never know. It's like as if the victory is never the game that hasn't stopped for there to be an acknowledgement of victory. There is something that we are creatures that not only are fascinated with what we can touch, we're also fascinated by what we can observe through inner sight, the mind's eyes. The mind's eyes surpass the idea of the mind. It's functioning as a presence, and it's not too necessary now, but people will become aware of this non-dualistically. The unknown was here before the known. I feel this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate for the ideological creature, the unknown. Because the known doesn't know the unknown knows itself. We are objects that name themselves, therefore, two immediate dimensions of involvement to be a human being. You need to observe the subjective realms, the meaning to phenomena, the implication. Even law can be considered to be an abstraction that is considered real. Do you know? That means the language, all language is existing in people's minds, animated in accordance to how their attention engages it. So we are unknown seers of a known sight. Now, it's like, why should there be 8 billion unknown eyes looking at, in a known way, looking at a system that is so big it's inevitably unknown? It's like the Wi-Fi. When you search for Wi-Fi on your phone, you find the routers that are in the range. So let us say it's a gathering of eyes. Let us say each pair of eyes is its own inner world. That every human being we see, there is a way that they're looking at life that nobody on the planet can see like that. You see, our inner realms are different. That means, look at these two people in the picture. Both of them have different constitutions of meaning and identity. It's like, you know what it is? In the middle of being an object in the void, we're realizing a rhythmic intelligence moving. You know, we have been so focused on what our eyes see, but we haven't wondered too much as a species of how do we see our own eyes. And the biggest insight I received on this is that the eyes of the human being are neither an object and neither a subject. So, welcome Dan in the chat section. Guys, Dan says time is older than itself. Yeah, time is, I mean, time to itself is probably timeless. You know, in the Mahabharata, in this epic, time is the narrator. Literally, Rishi Vyasa, when he wrote the Mahabharata, he's like, yeah, time gets to see everything, so time can narrate it. You know. So in the Mahabharata, existence is a narration of time in some sense. So let us say that what is the purpose of sight? because we have two words for it, being and doing. Like a human being is something, and when a human being moves how they are being, it's like literally the doer forms. That means if you never move from the beginning of your life, you wouldn't even know who you are. You know what I mean? It's like when I say movement, I mean it's like your expression of your like personality that needs to be accompanied with something animate. So you see, sometimes when I look at people, I can tell if they are thinking about something on their own, or if the person is just, you know, like there's a difference between, I remember in school when I was young, like it's like you can choose to not put an effort to solve the problem, or you can choose to put an you can choose to put an effort to solve the problem yourself, or you can choose to have an effort to see what others have done, right? So I'm saying that that is a total visible difference. After a while, you can see in people, those who have understood there is a solo dimension component to the world, you know. That means rather than the person thinking they're alone or they're not alone, you're actually both of them at the same time. You know, in your inner realms, you're alone. In your outer realms, you have a chance to see other minds and whatnot. Okay. I don't know, guys. It just feels to me we are inside a linguistic simulation. We have prevented ourselves to recognize experience is an energetic, instantaneous movement. Therefore, as an experiencer, you cannot be dual. You're witness experiencing the dual. Do you know the experiencer is not dual? But from a linguistic standpoint, because we think we are an idea, because the idea of ourself and who we are is separate, we can either associate with it or not associate. So from the beginning, I think everybody is aware, like in all the birthday candles, the person is blown. It's like whose birthday has it really been? I mean, take away your name, take away your personality, you know, and you'll just see, even if you take away the notion of time, you just see you're a existential creature. You know, we are existential intelligence. It doesn't matter if the world is just made, it's just an atomic dimension even. The thing is, what is the potential of matter? The potential of matter, regardless of our certainty of mind being in its own dimension, is that it has become a mind. So, what happens when you leave a bunch of atoms in the universe? They become minds. Who knew? Who knew objects are moving towards a subjective position, right? It's not all objects, but it is peculiar that there's so many different species on the same planet. You know, that means for me it was an oddity. Why wasn't it just one genetical pattern? Why so many? How could there be so many genetical patterns? And then I formed a theory, which I kind of realized that what has the planet been doing? It's like a rock gravitating more and more stuff space debris or space rocks to itself. So I thought, what if the Earth, in its process of kind of building itself through gravitation, you know, it has within it these what I've called potentially intelligent particles. So what that means is it could be that certain particles are in the planet and then arising and being exposed to light, and these particles are not limited to the constitution of how behavior is on Earth. So we could be like the weird, we could be a kind of space particle. Our descendants were chemical, like stardust. Like literally on a cellular level, even very tiny level. That's the cool thing, because what we consider to be the person is just a certain circumstance. Back in the day, soldiers in the battlefield would get wounded. Like, think of the medieval times. The soldier would get wounded and it had to watch itself die. And you could totally see that being a moment where the fragility of the existence is suggesting the language was a show. What I mean is that through evolutionary circumstances, we find ourselves as chess masters of the pawns of our own definition. We define what we are, then we work with it. Our body, our genetics, and epigenetics are its mind. And we can say free will is the potential of genetics. It's the opportunity that advanced formation of cellular structure provides. That means all those people who have this notion that they're a soul, you need a body first. You know what I mean? That means there needs to be this notion of you are something in order to be something else. This is why the ultimate tends to be beyond the language threshold, and how in the Upanishads they would say neti neti. Pretty much people would come to these sages and be like, yo man, is this enlightenment? And the sage would be like, not this, bro, not this. And what it meant was, it was nothing. If you're asking, if you doubt, then you don't know what it is. Because it is not a state where there is a doubter. That's the strange thing about our minds. It's like we have to build an advanced civilization with a human psychology that has a tolerance of seeing multiple versions of the same thing at the same time. A gathering of eyes means a gathering of the potential those eyes see. There was the story of the Tower of Babylon. All human beings united under one language dared to build a tower that reached the level of the gods where all human beings can attain that state. As the tower was being built and all human beings united under one language, the gods saw this and were like, no way, Jose, you know? And someone named Jose on Earth freaked out. You know, like the gods know my name. But the whole point, imagine this. Imagine, like, pretty much what I'm saying is the gods make human beings no longer speak the same language. So this universal language fragments, breaks. As human beings can't speak the same language, they can't see the same thing. Because they can't see the same thing, they can't build this tower to the level of the gods. So guys, Dan in the chat section says the observer effect states minds make matter. See, the thing about that is, yes, but from the scientific standpoint, to define mind and be certain of mind is like being certain of God. It's too fundamental. It's too untestable. Do you see? So I feel here's the issue. Believing you're a mind is the same as believing there's a God. Just think about this, guys. That it's the abstract being treated as real. We're pretty much trying to make a subject into an object or an object into a subject rather than being content with both dimensions simultaneously. Right now, I'm an object which is communicating subjects, right? I feel when somebody sits still and silent in a forest and meditates, what's happening is the opposite. Is that a subject is trying to be an object. So the person wants to see a god. The person wants to see an angel. The person wants to see an, interdimensional being from a theosophical angle. And these are all just in some sense activities. They're like, this is what the cosmos is doing. So Dan, I'm just reading your comment. There is this thing that Terence McKenna said, like if you say that going at the speed of light, you can't see anything, you're going faster than visibility, then any moment where we're not thinking of time, because time is limited to the visible, you know, like our visible references of the passage of events. It's like Terence McKenna was saying, what if that moment where it's timeless, we're actually aware faster than the speed of light? So there is that question. Even the question of, let's say something was moving at like speed of light, our definitions are limited to the speed of light. So beyond the speed of light, to define it would kind of mean it's like unknown. So there is this thing that it is true that certain local events we have systemized and measured, but on another angle, it's like, how do you measure a river with a cup? And all of human knowledge and thought is like a small cup, and this cosmic activity is like a moving river, and it's alive, but it's alive through us, and it's strange. What is the purpose of a subject? To continue as an object. What is the purpose of an object? To be balanced enough to remain a subject. So it's the subject object existential and experiential obsession that, once observed, the witness moves the moment. This gathering of eyes is a unique focusing of energy. It's like 8 billion people are pointing laser weapons, you know, with a laser beam pointer at like the future. And what it is, it's not weapons of physicality, it's not like physical weapons, it's their intelligence. We could say what is going on, and what we're calling a civilization is 8 billion rivers of imagery joining. Imagine 8 billion rivers going to the same ocean. a place of ultimate rest. Imagine right now you were in such an advanced civilization, you did not have to fear. You did not have to fear the outcome of your species. You did not have to fear the outcomes of your neighbor. You would not fear the outcomes of yourself, because here's the best kind of civilization, a civilization where in the back of people's mind they feel safe. Because without that basic both physiological and psychological safety, or I would say without that basic physiological safety, there isn't the inner realms. That means at a time of war, geniuses or descend to the realm of primitive savages, even. For me, I remember there was this argument. Somebody had said that some evil people, like for example, Stalin, Hitler, people who led to massacres, some people were said made I remember hearing this argument that it's like, yo, we needed their mistakes to learn. And I was like, no, because the amount of deaths that the world wars led to, just all the wars, like if you think about it, is the denial it has slowed down the advancement of civilization. We have to treat the future of our civilization as our most important asset, as our most important advantage. Do you know? Because it's the only thing that, even if you're solo in this life, there's honor in it. There's an honor where it's like the crowd, the group, or like how the wolf pack walks. And then there is a sort of honor of when you are alone with the universe, then you are left with your own knowing. That means here's the thing about life where the person has to actually change their mindset to make the unknown become interesting. Because the unknown is where we end up. We are in a conditional known setting of organic life. And we will move from this condition. So, you as a human being have to discover your mind alone with the cosmos and not alone with the cosmos. Both dimensions are required to be witnessed. Because anything the person feels they don't have, because you only desire something if there's a feeling of incompletion. That means, imagine you went to a restaurant and you wanted a certain drink, and the person was like, oh, we're out of this drink. You would suffer if you just desired that drink. But if you desired another drink as equally, then you wouldn't suffer. But the thing is, because we have specification in our outcome of our own destiny, it's literally we get disappointed by how the future behaves differently than we expect. This is why after the chasing truth game becomes boring, the design of the present moment becomes interesting. That means not just like the person is saying, all right, I'm going to love my way out of the simulation of suffering. It's like, no, you can't just love your way out of something where you require to look at its design first. You know, We are a genetical movement. This can't be avoided. This is literally the life part, the form part to the life form. Now, how the life moves the form is the mystery. We can see the unknown here first. If that's the case, knowledge appears like an illusion to itself forever, because its own sense of being caused into the realm is unknown. If the known is there and there is unknown, then we are actually the truth. So, based on our mind coming before the object, being here before the object or after the object, suggests whether we feel like we're in an illusion or we feel we are in the truth. I personally feel that you can't have the concept of an illusion without knowing the truth first, because what are you, what is the illusion keeping you from? That means it's like you can only know you're in a simulation if you also know there is a reality. And then when you wonder about how do I know there is a reality, that on its own is outside of the framework of the notion of the simulation. So what does that mean? That means simulation. All those people who think life is a simulation, that's one side of the coin. So what does that mean? That means it's like 8 billion genetical, linguistically simulated experiential events. That's what we are. We are a genetical, linguistically simulated experiential event. We are the cosmos experiencing itself through language experiencing itself, through a human framework experiencing itself, where the void never moved. For me, this is the crazy thing about the idea of God. That in the Abrahamic traditions, it is seen as a concept of something that was never born and never died, can never die. That means everything in this universe is constructed, then is maintained for some time, then breaks. It goes through the Brahman, Vishnu, Shiva cycle, you know. So something that is unborn means something beyond all that we see visibly that changes. What that means is God is an inconceivable point where all conception moves from, has moved away from, And now the only command is to move towards it from the religious perspective. And the issue is, where I say this kind of puts down the religious issue, that where did God create earth? This is Mr. Within's question to all theologians in the world. Where is earth right now? And we see, whether you're secular or not, the answer is in the heavens. Same answer for both communities. Because I have realized whatever I feel I know, because I change, how can I know? So it's like every day I'm experiencing a new version of my own eyes. A new rhythm of the life of the mind. I created this term, this was maybe like 2015. I called it experience tunneling. Sorry, it was earlier than that, but I called it experience tunneling, where we are never experiencing the same thing and we're tunneling through the archetypes that we entertain. Imagine you're in a room of people and each of these people come to meet you. Imagine you're a king or queen back in the day, and different people, important people from all around the land are coming to meet you. You know, you would see each person, by the nature of their own inner realm, invites in their own dimension of discourse. But it means that to different people, we are different versions of our own self, versions that we may never know till the end of time how the other saw us. You know. But the whole point is, it's like, because we identify with change, therefore it's as if like we should create this concept that we have static identities and we have dynamic identities. A dynamic identity is a person who is identifying with how things change rather than what is being changed. They're identifying with the experience of change. What that means is life becomes like a wind, like you're a wind and you're passing through various ways that your own moment of mind appears. Imagine someone being like, I can't find my mind, and suddenly all the sages in the room started laughing. Because before you find your mind, the mind has found you. The question is being received from mind. That means the truth of the speaker and the listener is the same. Not the ideological component, how energy is. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, the sage, says, first the I am comes. Excuse me. First the I am myself comes. So I'm going to say it from the beginning. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, first the I am myself comes. Then the I am myself leaves. So the sense of I am myself, that first comes, then that leaves. Then I am all comes. Then I am all leaves. That means the person felt individual, then they suddenly feel collective. They're like, no way, I'm everything at the same time. Wow, divine bliss. What are these tears? Are these divine tears on my face? Like the person is in that state. The I am all has come. Sometimes when I speak about an advanced civilization, we require to be in that mindset that we are responsible for our species, not just for the ideological analysis of it, of individuality. The whole thing matters now because we can see it. We can notice it now after 4 billion years of evolution or whatnot. After that, Sri Ramana Maharshi says, after the I am all comes and the I am all leaves, the I am comes. This is the final stage for the mystic. The I am comes. And then the I am leaves, and then the true finale, nature is. That is the resolution. All those people who are running after spirituality, you are returning to nature being before you were a doership, before there was, if I can even say the term, doinghood. You know, I think doership is better. Before you were doing, the world was being. Oh, do you see how peace is instant? It's unconditional. This is why some people, their happiness has nothing to do with the moment. It's just there. You know, I have been like, as a kid, I was known like they would say like there would be bad news or something, the family would hear, and everybody would be upset, and I was like in a silly way, like laughing, right? And it was, even though I was young, but the whole notion was that for me it was just like a notion that came by. It was like how much does the notion occupy your attention throughout the day? Imagine you're a violinist and somebody tells you, um, you're bad at rock, paper, scissors, something totally irrelevant, and actually a game that nobody can really be bad at if you figure it out. You can only be bad at it if the other person is cheating, you know. That means they're just waiting your hand to open first before they open their hand. That's But the point is that violinist could go the whole day thinking, "Am I bad at rock, paper, scissors? What the fuck?" You know, like, you know. And so that violinist, it was like an event, an ideological event, occupied the whole day that was meant to be filled with many ideological events. You should treat your mind and its content as an art gallery. That means when I go into even a different room, like physically, you know, anytime I move, the inner realms change. The inner realms are, you can't work with it if you're trying to control them. This is why power for a timeless being is foolishness. Those people who seek power, they haven't understood the timeless nature of the realm yet. You know, and it's this is a message that is in some sense like, if it in its email subject heading would be to gods and man. You know, that means it's a notion that the lesser and the higher are simultaneously equivalent in the value of their occurrence. That means it's like we are not gods And it's like we are not galaxies, but we're existing at the same time as a galaxy is existing. We're not a universe, but we're existing in the universe. And the reason we say we are not is because we have chosen to separate ourselves. That was the free will's first orders. The moment the free will emerged, it was like, separate me from everything. And suddenly the ego was like, yes, yes, I'm individual. Do you know? So that's the thing. It's like we are becoming more intelligent. Ah, excuse me, guys. Sometimes I need quick intermissions. So hope the content is more interesting than the pauses. Pretty much, I don't know. It's just like we've reached a point where we are aware that we have continued so far, and there will come a point where we discontinue. And now is an energetic opportunity where there's the sophisticated positioning of mind, and how is this mind being used? That means no longer it is enough just for people to physically be happy. It's like, what's the point of a creature finding food its whole life, to keep itself alive, but it's doing nothing? Do you know? Maybe aside from genetical reproduction, that's honorable, its own noble lens. But I'm saying, like, if we don't discriminate for there to be a difference between existing and living, it's like some people have they are looking at the world so they actually see what is here. And some people, they're not looking at the world, they're looking at their inner world. So if you see the outer realm and then go towards your inner realm, you have control. If you don't study your outer realm and just go in your inner realm, you don't have control. Or if you do, it's not from your mind. I mean, even if you look at the sentence, imagine we say person A, imagine person A says, my body. Like, what is that my if we are just the body? We are being and doing things simultaneously. I feel a part of our brain is connecting everything with everything else, and a part of our brain is like endlessly disconnecting things. And what the person is just whatever percentage of this inner film is vocalized or played. We have institutionalized reality limited to certain language. We have to free the species from ideological uh, self exile. create a new ethos, get the world to see itself. What then? Then the great Renaissance begins. A Renaissance, the value of it is every person has understood that they are the bringer of the new. And what greater work can be done? I mean, think about it. Think you were as if an alien looking at the planet from, like, I don't know, 100 years, not 100 years, but 100 meters in the air. You would see it's our will. Novelty and free will are kind of like the same. You know, Shakespeare has this quote. He says, a ship can sit at harbor, but that's not what ships are made for. It's the same thing with the human mind. A human mind just seeing itself is like a ship at harbor. But that's not what the human mind is made for. The human mind is made for its collective development. Just look at cells. They join together to become complex cells. Somebody once said the difference between consciousness and awareness is that consciousness has a form to be separate in, but awareness doesn't, pure awareness. There's a story I'll share, guys, before I end off. Or before at least I head for Q&A. There is this man, and this story is nice, guys. This story is a royal story, I can tell you. You'll figure out at the end what I mean by that. There's a man. He goes into the forest. He feels as if he's drawn to something that his soul yearns. This man goes into the forest and starts meditating. And when he starts meditating, that means he starts taking in the whole moment, not just acting robotically. This man attains an inner peace that, as the story goes, 500 followers find him. And so it's these 500 monks in the middle of a forest, and they're all every day cultivating an inner peace that is making them happier. Now, one of these 500 disciples is a person who is smiling always, always smiling for some reason, more than all the other monks. And only the man, the main guy, the guru, who the 500 disciples came to, only he knows why this man is smiling. This disciple is smiling. So let's call that the smiling, call him the smiling disciple. Now what happens is it becomes winter time. And all these monks, they go, are invited by the king in the kingdom, and the kingdom's like, all right, wise monks, come and chill in the kingdom during winter, you know. And the king's like, all right, I'm going to make time for myself to come and talk to these monks. And the king is so busy and occupied by different tasks. His wives are fighting for their own son, their prince, to go forth. The politics of the situation, the king doesn't know who to trust. So the king's like, all right, let me have some wisdom around to see what's going on. But the king is so busy that he doesn't get a chance to see, and winter passes and these monks are all about to go back into the forest. But then the king, right at the end, finds time. And the king comes and sees that the head monk, it was an old man now. I don't know, in 1 year he grew 40 years. In one winter he grew 40 years. I'm joking. But the king says to this old man, stay in the kingdom and let your disciples go to the forest. You're old, and I will, like, the palace will take care of you. And you can also be a source of wisdom for me, pretty much something like that. And the old man, the old sage who the 500 disciples had come to, he suddenly sees, yeah, he's pretty old, and he looks at the smiling disciple, which he was fond of, and he says, okay, you take everybody into the forest and just continue. And that's what happens. And all the disciples go back in the forest, the smiling disciple now being the head. And this guru, he becomes like the counsel of the king. Now, years pass by, and the smiling disciple comes back to visit his old master, his guru. And he goes to the guru, and he sits, and they're, let's say, having tea or something, and they're talking. And the whole time, this smiling disciple just says, looks at his guru, who's gotten old, and he says, oh, what happiness! Oh, what happiness! That's it. So this smiling disciple has come back. He's sitting in the palace beside this, what do you call it? The guru, the old guru. And now something unique happens to the story. The king comes into the room. The king walks into the room. The king walks into the room, and it's a king. Back in the day, a king walks in the room. Now this monk, the smiling monk, is looking at his master and saying, oh, what happiness, oh, what happiness, and is ignoring the king. And the king is like, what the fuck? Like, in his mind, he's like, I'm a king. How dare this guy not honor me? Does he not know who I am? Kingly ego. But the inferior king's ego. In Vedanta, there's stories of enlightened kings as well. So what happens? The king gets offended. And in the middle of the guy saying, oh, what happiness, he looks at the guru and he says, your disciple has laid around here being so lazy. It's like he's become a fool. It's like his mind's not working properly, you know? He's saying, oh, what happiness, without having discipline and work, like it's a king speaking. And then right when he's saying that, suddenly the old guru says, oh, hang on, king. And he stops the king from continuing his rant. And he says, king, there's something you don't know. And there's this deep silence. The guru says, dear king. He doesn't say it like that, but he says, dear king, what you don't know is that this disciple in front of you, the smiling disciple, he used to be a king himself. And he used to have armored guards. And then he put all that away, came to the forest, became a disciple, and now he has understood true happiness. He has understood the wisdom of the king of nature. And the king gets goosebumps and realizes that this monk, the smiling monk from the beginning, he was a king that had decided to become a monk. Do you see why he was smiling the whole time? And so that's the message. That you can play games with Earth. The Earth does its own thing. You can play games with the potential of Earth, your mind, but the mind does its own thing. And it is the soul that is watching in the back, like, okay, what's going on here? You know? And so that was the point of the story, guys. You know, there's another story of kingly story, a royal story, where there was a king in Vedic times, and this king it gets a dream that he's a beggar. Literally imagine you're a king sleeping in your chamber and suddenly you dream you're a beggar. You know, like, and back in the day, dreams were significant. They were like foreshadowing your future life or something to certain cultures. So the king freaks out. It's like, no way, am I going to be a beggar in the next life? And he goes to his councilman, this wise man, this sage, this guru in the throne, like in the palace and whatever. And the guru says, you are neither a peasant, you are neither a king. Sorry, not a peasant, a beggar. I don't know why I said peasant, a beggar. It's Vedic times, you know. I mean, there were peasants there. I mean, it's the same thing, I guess. I don't know. But he says a beggar. And so the sage looks at him and says, you are neither a beggar, you're neither a king. Who are you? And the king suddenly realizes that the king is the Atman, is the Para-Brahman, but the Atman is the throne, is the crown. So when you realize you are an experiential event, you are a chord being struck, you know, being strummed in this cosmos, you know, then it becomes more of a significant thing. So that king realized he was neither a beggar, neither a king. And that's how you rule kingdoms, dear listeners. That is the greatest kind of governance, where you are and are not, because that is the eyes of wisdom. The circle completes. And earth is free from the mind that could never break. We should treat language like a technology. We should treat identity as something that semi the free will is engineering, and semi it's a response to the stimulus of the environment. In Japan, there's a saying, they say the man is the room he enters. Or the man is the room he's in. So if we treat ideological states of mind as rooms, we won't identify with the room, so we actually flow. There's a freedom that you have to fight for. Usually it tends to be outer realm freedom. But inner realm freedom, you don't fight for, you notice. You remember. The freedom of your mind is a remembrance. The freedom of your body is an event. And a remembrance is different because to remember, imagine there was a timeless dimension you were existing in, then you entered a dimension of time. So remembering from a dimension of time, a timeless state, would technically mean all the definitions that are asking the question become void. So it's like the questioner disappearing before you give an answer. That's kind of like mysticism, you know? A species in denial of its potential greatness and advancement is literally like how Sebastian Maniscalco in his comedy he says, "What are you doing?" Something like that, you know. They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That means beauty is something held, and if one wants to live a beautiful life, that means perhaps the way your eyes are holding the meaning of the world is now of concern. Because really it's I'm telling you, it's just something. It was chaotic when I first noticed it. Then when you accept the chaos, then you can see the order. If the person hasn't accepted the chaos, they can't do anything. You can't even see the chaos to do anything. It's like the same thing where some people wonder, like, how does that surgeon have the guts to do surgery, like the strength, the will of the strength. And you see, because the surgeon is seeing way more complex levels to the situation than the average man, you freak out about things actually you don't know. Often we fear the unknown. But if that relationship changes where the unknown becomes actually uncharted territory, the best place to explore, we just need rivers of sincerity. We need a civilization that cares more for its mind because its mind is dictating what's happening to its body. But the mind for now is like through the program of language, being coded through language. So as we kind of like realize language is like the matrix screen code, that every person's mind is being a character in a story, in a linguistic story. And it's not just linguistics, it's like imagery as well. So that's those symbols in the matrix screen, they weren't just suggesting like the thoughts of the person or the potentials of the moment, but it was, you could say, it was also the imagery that was authorized to happen. That means that moment Neo realized he's like the shit, like that was the moment where the dude was like, no way, the code's different. I've been looking at the same looping code for like 20 years. It's finally different, thank God. Like so that's the thing. We are technically, the character and the story are not separate. That means being a character that's not in a story is like a human being hovering in empty space. You need that world to extract meaning from. I mean, a thinker is actually a seer. You need sight before you can have thoughts on something. So technically, from the linguistic level simulation, we are reverse engineering back to an image-based simulation, and from that image-based simulation, we're reverse engineering back to the silent experience state. So I would say there's three dimensions of reality that if we think these three dimensions are the same, life becomes very intense. If we can discriminate between the three, then it becomes easy. It's like, you know, if an alien, imagine you were like a salesman in a bazaar, and in your break you were just having a smoke, and an alien came down to earth in the middle, and you suddenly had a customer and you had to run back to your store, but an alien was there in the alley, let's say, when you where you were having a cigarette, and the alien's asking you like, hey man, what are human beings doing? And you're like, holy shit, there's a customer at my store, but at the same time an alien's asking me a question, imagine, in this hypothetical setting. So that person would, in that situation, just look. I thought about this. What would a street smart person say to an alien? You know? And I thought it would be something like, the alien's like, what are human beings doing? You know? It's like, what are you human beings doing? What's your purpose? And the person would look at the alien and be like, hey man, we're just trying things out. And that's it. All our ancestors have been trying things out, and if they've had perseverance, it's echoed into something. If they haven't had perseverance, their energetic event, literally how they have lived in the moment, hasn't echoed far. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. I'm gonna open it up 5 minutes to Q&A, and then the world continues turning. So, 5 minute Q&A if anybody has a question.